Have you ever found yourself putting something in your cart not because you loved it? Not even because you needed it, but because of how it might look to someone else? Maybe it was the logo. Maybe it was the brand. Maybe it was just the idea that someone, somewhere, might be watching in. They'd think you had it all together. But the price isn't just on the tag. It's in the invisible debt, the quiet stress, the soul that trades contentment for performance. We don't just buy things anymore, we buy applause. And all the while, God whispers, "Why are you spending money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy?" Isaiah 5:5. Bunding door. There's a strange thing about applause, never lasts. What you bought to impress last week gets ignored this week. And so you run faster, spend more, try harder. It's like running on a treadmill that only speeds up. You chase the approval of people you don't even know, while the approval of God waits quietly, gently. Do you remember the last time you bought something and felt more empty after? That wasn't a coincidence. That was a sign. Imagine a man dragging a golden chain. It sparkles, it catches the light. People admire it, but they don't see the weight. He's not wearing it, it's wearing him. That's how it feels to live for status. You collect more, but it costs you freedom. Jesus said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Mark 8:36. In our race to be seen, we've lost sight of who we truly are. Look closely at your calendar, your spending, your scrolling. Whose name is hidden between the lines? Who are you performing for? We live in an age where image is everything and identity is borrowed. But God never called you to impress. He called you to be free, to live simply, to walk humbly. Not in designer shoes, but in truth. Can you hear him now? There's another kind of wealth peace. A clear conscience. A soul not entangled. You don't have to keep proving yourself. You don't need to keep buying silence for your insecurity. What would it look like to live for an audience of one? What if the applause of heaven was worth more than all the likes on earth? Think about the child who paints freely, not wondering if the world will applaud. That's what it once was, liked to live unburdened. But somewhere along the way you learned to measure your worth in reactions. You started dressing for approval, speaking for applause, spending for validation. And slowly, the real you got quieter. The soul doesn't die quickly, fades under layers of performance. But even now, God is calling your name, not your image. You keep refreshing the screen, hoping it fills something. You check again, still nothing. The more we scroll, the more we starve. We weren't made to feed off of envy or comparison. We were made to abide in love. Jesus didn't die for the version of you that wins approval. He died for the real you. The one behind the purchases, behind the posts, and he's still waiting. Not on the screen, but in the silence. Maybe you've been climbing a ladder, leaning against the wrong wall. You've achieved, you've collected, but you still feel empty. That's not failure, it's a holy clue. A nudge to stop, to listen. What if the emptiness isn't the enemy, but the invitation? The invitation to return, not to hustle, not to prove, but to be still and be known. The weight you carry is not from things alone. It's from trying to be enough. But the gospel of Jesus doesn't start with earn or impress. It starts with come. Come, all you who are weary and burdened. That's not a marketing slogan. That's a door swinging open. You don't need more things. You need rest for your soul. So here's the question. Whose approval are you buying? And is it costing you your soul? There is another way. A lighter way, a freer way. His name is Jesus, and he doesn't need your mask, your brand, or your balance. He just wants your heart. The world may clap for the surface, but only he say sand loves what's beneath. Will you let him? They told you success looked like owning more, but they never told you about the silence that follows. That strange echo in your chest when the package arrives and nothing inside you changes. The soul was never meant to be filled by things, it was meant to be filled by love, by truth, by God himself. And until you return to that source, no amount of buying will quiet the ache. Sometimes, the people we're trying to impress don't even see us. You've worn yourself out performing for an invisible audience, and still, the applause never comes. But here's the truth. You were never created for applause. You were created for connection with your Creator, who knew your name before you had anything to prove. What if that's where you start again? Every receipt tells a story, not just of what you bought, but of what you were hoping to feel. Confidence, worth, belonging. But no store sells what your heart is really craving. That kind of peace doesn't have a price tag. It was bought already on a cross, with blood, not gold. That receipt reads, paid in full. You might say, I'm just keeping up, but the truth is you're running from emptiness, from shame, from the fear of being unseen. But God doesn't run from you, he runs to you. Even when your arms are full of stuff you never needed, even when you're buried beneath layers of performance, his arms are still open, and they've never closed. It's not wrong to enjoy good things, but when things own you, when they define your worth, direct your decisions, and distract your soul, that's when they become chains. The enemy won't always tempt you with evil. Sometimes he tempts you with comfort, but the road to freedom is narrow, and it always starts by laying things down. You weren't born with this hunger to impress. It was planted slowly, silently by a world that profits from your insecurity. They show you curated lives, filtered faces, numbers that measure nothing eternal. And somewhere along the way, you began to wonder, am I enough? But heaven never asked for your performance. It only asked for your presence. Have you ever looked at a full shopping cart and still felt empty? That's not your failure, it's your soul's signal. A whisper from within saying, you are made for more than this. When you try to feed a spiritual hunger with material things, the appetite only grows. But one word from God can quiet the craving. There's a strange silence after every purchase, a stillness where joy was supposed to be. But temporary things can only give temporary comfort. Real rest, deep satisfaction, it doesn't come from a discount. It comes from surrender. Not adding more, but letting go. That's when your hands become free enough to hold what truly matters. What if the reason you can't stop scrolling, spending, chasing isn't because you're greedy, but because you're lonely? We live in a world full of followers, but void of friendship. But Jesus didn't ask you to earn his love. He gave it before you even knew his name. His eyes saw you, not to your possessions, just you. They called it ambition, but you know it's exhaustion. You've been spending to feel seen, hustling to feel whole, and still lying awake at night, wondering why it's not enough. There is a love that doesn't demand anything in return. A grace that meets you not when you're impressive, but when you're honest. Will you finally let it in? The price tag isn't always attached to what you buy, it's often hidden in what you lose. Your peace, your purpose, your prayers. We trade invisible treasures for visible trophies, and wonder why we feel bankrupt where it matters most. But what if you paused? What if you asked God, what have I truly gained? You keep reaching for more, another outfit, another upgrade, another applause, because the echo of not enough keeps whispering. But the truth, You are always enough in His eyes, not because of what you own, but because of who owns you. The one who left heaven's riches to walk beside you in your poverty of heart. Even the richest man can starve for love. The most followed woman can feel unseen. Because applause fades, trends die, and fashion changes. But the love of Christ, it doesn't expire. It doesn't shift with culture. It meets you, not where you're glamorous, but where you're broken, tired, and ready to come home. We've built altars out of shopping malls and confession booths out of comment sections. But none of them hear you. None of them forgive you. Only one voice calls your name with mercy, not marketing. He's not asking you to add him to your wish list. He's asking if he can write your story from here. You don't have to spend your way into love. You don't have to decorate your pain. You are already seen, already known, already pursued. The cross was not a luxury, it was a rescue. And it wasn't purchased with gold, but with blood. That's how much you're worth. Have you ever noticed how silence feels heavier after a shopping spree? The noise fades, the packages are unwrapped, and yet something still aches. You tell yourself it's just stress, or boredom, or needing something new again. But what if it's your soul trying to speak? What if it's God gently reminding you that nothing bought can silence a hunger meant to be filled by Him? You weren't made to compete for approval like a product on a shelf. You were handcrafted, not manufactured. Chosen, not compared. But this world keeps trying to convince you that your worth is up for auction. And every time you buy into that lie, you step further from the truth that God never asked you to impress Him, just to trust Him. Look closely and you'll see. Many people walk through life with their hands full, but their hearts empty. They carry designer bags and broken dreams, expensive clothes and quiet cries. We polish the outside, but neglect the sacred interior. And slowly, we forget what wholeness even feels like. Until one day, in the quiet, God calls out not to condemn, but to invite us back. You don't need a newer version of yourself, you need the truest version. The one God dreamed before the world told you who to be. Somewhere beneath the clutter of comparison and consumerism, your soul is still whispering His name. It's not asking for more things. It's asking for more of Him. One day, the carts will be empty, the shelves cleared, and the sales forgotten. But the choices you made for love, for truth, for faith will echo into eternity. Jesus didn't come to offer you luxury. He came to offer you life. Real, abundant, lasting life. Don't trade that for a discount dream. You are worth the full price He paid. We often chase what glitters, forgetting that gold can blind as easily as it can shine. The more we grasp for recognition, the more we become strangers to our own souls. The noise of consumption grows loud, but in the quiet corners of our hearts, God still whispers, "You don't need to earn what I've already given freely." Have you ever wondered why the compliments never last? Why the likes fade and the applause dies down? Because the soul was never meant to feast on fleeting things. It needs something eternal, something rooted. That's why, even in moments of worldly success, there's still a longing that says, there must be more. Every lie the world sells has a cost. Sometimes not in dollars, but in peace. We trade rest for relevance, simplicity for spectacle, and slowly we become exhausted actors in someone else's script. But Jesus offers a different role, to be a beloved child, not a performer. Are you tired of performing yet? The world says, earn your place, prove your worth, be more, do more, have more. But God says, be still and know that I am God. When was the last time you truly let go of that hustle? When was the last time you rested not just your body, but your soul? Maybe it's time to ask, what have you been buying that's already been paid for? Love, belonging, identity, all purchased at the cross. You don't need to shop for what God has already gifted in full. Just receive it and walk away from the shelf empty-handed, but with a soul finally full. We fill our carts with possessions, hoping they'll fill the void within. But the soul doesn't consume like the body does. The soul longs for meaning, for truth, for God Himself. And no matter how shiny the purchase or how admired we are, that sacred hunger still whispers, I was made for more. The crowd applauds, the cameras flash, and the world watches your every move, but who are you when the room clears and the lights fade? Do you know the voice that still calls you by name when no one else is listening? That voice belongs to the one who never stops seeing you. We spend years building an image, crafting a persona, buying masks that fit the crowd. But when the storm hits, it's not the mask that saves us, it's the foundation beneath. And Jesus, not image, is the only rock that doesn't crumble when life begins to shake. Sometimes the heaviest burden isn't the debt or the hustle, it's the pressure to be someone you're not, to keep up the show, to silence the soul. But Jesus never asked you to impress Him. He just asked you to follow Him, scars and all. Isn't that a freer way to live? You were never meant to impress strangers. You were meant to reflect the image of God. And He doesn't measure your worth by your wealth, your popularity, or your status. He sees the heart, the real you, and He says, you are mine. What more approval could you possibly need? What if the pursuit of approval has cost you more than just money? What if it has cost you your peace? Think about how many hours you've traded chasing trends, how often you've silenced your convictions to fit in, how often you've ignored that still small voice whispering, you don't need to perform to be loved. God's love is not a prize to be earned, but a home to be returned to. Have you noticed how temporary it all feels? The thrill of the purchase, the high of recognition, it fades like mist. But the ache inside, it lingers. And what if that ache is sacred? What if it's God's invitation to stop consuming and start connecting to Him, to others, to who you truly are beneath the clutter? We scroll through curated lives, compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, and we wonder why we never feel enough. But you are not called to comparison. You are called to communion, not to impress, but to abide, not to consume, but to become more like Christ. Even the richest life will feel bankrupt without purpose, and there is no deeper purpose than walking with God. He doesn't need your trophies, He wants your trust. So maybe it's time to lay down what impresses the world and pick up what pleases Him. He already delights in you. The world shouts, do more, buy more, be more. But Jesus whispers, come to me, and I will give you rest. What would it look like to actually believe that voice? To build a life, not on applause, but on assurance, not on status, but on grace. There comes a point when you stop and ask, whose life am I really living? Is it mine, shaped by faith and purpose, or theirs, shaped by applause and approval? The gospel of hustle is loud, but the whisper of God is steadier. And maybe that whisper is calling you to come home, to come back to who you were created to be. You were never meant to wear a mask just to belong. God doesn't love the version of you the world approves of. He loves the one behind a mask, the tired, searching, hopeful one. And when He sees you, He doesn't flinch. He simply says, come. All the things you thought you needed, they fade. But the one you've always needed remains. He doesn't ask for perfection. He simply asks for your heart. So ask yourself, Are you still trying to buy what can only be received by grace? You were not created to impress. You were created to reflect His image, His truth, His love. The world offers mirrors of distortion, but Christ offers a mirror of redemption. Step away from the stage, return to the shepherd, and you'll discover the only approval that ever mattered was already yours.